Hello, grade 8s. Now we're going to look at the topic of exponents. Alright, so what is an exponent? Basically, if you have a number, okay, and you take it to the power of something, okay, let's say 1 to the power 2. This 2 over here is an exponent, okay? And what does that mean? 1 to the power 2 just means 1 times 1. If I had 1 to the power 3, that would be 1 times another 1. Yes, that's how we put it. So that is basically your exponent, that power, that raised number, that is your exponent. And now we're going to start with squares, all right? Then we're going to go over to cubes. But what is a square? A square is a product of a number multiplied by itself. All right, for example, if you have 0 times 0, that's the same as saying 0 squared. All right, so the 2 we say is squared. Okay, that's a simplified way of saying it. And that will basically give you 0 because anything multiplied by 0 is 0. Then we get to 1. If we have 1 times 1, it's the same as saying 1 squared. And we know that 1 times 1 is just 1. Remember when we did those properties of 0 and 1? That's where it comes from. Now, what about 2 times 2? So 2 times 2 is the same as saying 2 squared, which is equal to 4. Then we head over to 3 squared, which is equal to 9. And that's 3 times 3. Okay, so that is a square. Now let's look at exercise 3.1. So what if we have 5 times 5? 5 times 5, you know the answer is 25. But first, let's write it like this. That's 5 to the power 2, or 5 squared, and that's equal to 25. 6 times 6 is 6 squared, and that is equal to 36. 9 times 9 is 9 squared, so that is 81. 12 times 12 is the same as saying 12 squared, and that's equal to 144. So now, what I would propose you do, just like you learned your multiplication table from 1 up until 12, you can go over up until 15 if you want to. You should also learn your squares, okay? Your exponent when we deal with squares. So we know that 1 squared is 1, 2 squared is 4, 3 squared is 9, and it helps you to quickly do your multiplications or whatever word sums you have, okay? If you know what 3 squared is, you don't have to punch it in the calculator all the time. So you get to speed up your calculations going forward. All right. 4 squared, that's just 4 times 4, which is 16. 5 squared is 25. 6 squared is 36. 7 squared is 49. 8 squared is 64. 9 squared is 81. 10 squared is 100. What about 11 squared? That's 121. And 12 squared, that's 144. What about 13 squared? I think it's 169. I normally know up until, what do you call this? Up until 13, okay? So that is 169. But what is 14 squared? I think it's 258. No, 256 maybe. Let's just do it. 14 times 14, so we're going to multiply it by 4 first. So 4 times 4 is 16. 1 times 4 is 4 plus 1, that's 5. 0, so 4 times 1 is 4. 1 times 1 is 1. Yeah, so I'm wrong there. It's 196. So yes, you can see that I need to go back and learn my 14 squared. And what about 15 squared? Should I guess? I think not. Maybe let me just multiply it myself. Let me not embarrass myself by showing that I don't know what it is. 5 times 5, that's 25. Carry the 2. 1 times 5 is 5, plus 2 is 7. 5 times 1 is 5. 1 times 1 is 1. So we have 225. That is 15 squared. Okay, let's just check. So 14 squared, what is the answer there? Is 196. And what is 15 squared? That is 225. Okay, yeah, so just, one thing to note, that if you can, please learn these. It will make calculations go faster instead of you having to check on the calculator. All right. And now what happens if you have squares of a negative number? Remember what we said previously when we were looking at integers, that a negative number multiplied by a negative number is equal to positive. Okay, negative times negative is positive. Negative times positive is negative. Positive times negative is negative. Positive times positive is positive. Okay, something that you should always know at the back of your head. Now, what happens then when we have negative 1 squared? That's the same as saying negative 1 times negative 1. The negative and negative turn to a positive. 1 times 1 is simply 1. How about negative 2 squared? We have negative 2 times negative 2. That will be positive 4. So a negative number multiplied by a negative number always gives you a positive. Okay, so that's the squares of a negative number. What about a square root? A square root is the inverse operation of square numbers. So a square root then of 25 would be 5. Okay, remember 5 times 5 gives you 25. All right. Or rather, let's put it like this. 5 squared is 25. And if you then take the root of 25, you go back to 5. Okay, let's do this. Therefore, the root of 25 is 5. What is the root of 81? That is 9. So why I was saying you should know your squares is because if I were to put a square root, I know this would be 14. If I were to put a square root there, I know that would be 11. Okay, so it helps to know what the numbers squared are so that if you have a square root, it becomes easy to calculate. Having said that, let's go back then and rather do this exercise. So because we've done it, we know square root of 225, that is basically 15. Square root of 49, that is 7. Square root of 196, that's 14. 169 is 13. Square root of 36, that is 6. Square root of 25, that's 5. Square root of 144, that's 12. Square root of 16, that's 4. Square root of 121 is 11. Square root of 9 is 3. Square root of 100 is 10. Square root of 4 is 2. Square root of 81 is 9. Square root of 1 is 1. Actually, guys, it's very important. There was a joke, a meme that I saw. If you have a square root of 25, it can either be positive or negative. Okay, why? Because if I took 15 squared, that is 225. And if I take negative 15 and I squared it, that is also 225. So the answer then should be plus or minus for all of them. Okay, that's the thing with square roots. You can either get a positive or a negative number, because if you square negative 6, it gives you positive 36. Okay, so just be careful. Do not forget this, please. All right, and the square root of 64, that is basically plus minus 8. So in this topic over here where we talk about exponents, specifically the squares and the square root, it's just to make you aware and also for you to know them, okay, at least up to 15 squared. And once you know your numbers that are squared, it's easy to recognize the square roots as well. And like we said, squares of negative numbers do give you a positive. So whenever you deal with the square root, your answer will always have a positive or a negative answer. Okay. Yeah, and that's it. See you on the next topic of cubes. On the previous topic of exponents, we spoke about squares. where you multiply the number by itself just twice. Okay, like 1 times 1 or 2 times 2 and so forth. Now we're going to look at cubes. Now a cube is the product of a number multiplied 3 times by itself. All right. For example, we have 0 times 0 times 0. That's the same as saying 0 cubed, which is just 0. And then we have 1 times 1 times 1, which is 1 cubed, and that's just 1. Then we have 2 times 2 times 2, which is 2 cubed, all right? Meaning 2 times 2 gives you 4, and then another 2, then it gives you 8. And then remember also now we have negative. Remember negative times negative, that gives you a positive, and 2 times 2 gives you 4. Positive times a negative will give you a negative, and 4 times 2 is 8. So that's why when you have negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2, it gives you negative 8. Now let's see. If I had 1 cubed, what would my answer be? Simply 1. But if I have negative 1 cubed, it's like saying negative 1 times negative 1, which is just positive 1. And then I have another negative 1, so my answer is going to be negative 1. So basically, if you have a cube of a negative number, that number at the end, your result, it'll be a negative. With squares, it was different, all right? Because we said a negative times a negative gives you a positive. I hope that is clear. Now, 2 cubed, we said it already, it's 8. But if I have negative 2 cubed, it's going to be negative 8. 3 cubed, that's 3 times 3 times 3. 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 3 is 27. And we know here we're going to have a negative 27. 4 cubed, 4 times 4 is 16. 16 times 4, that is 64. And here it's just going to be negative 64. 5 cubed, that's 125. And that's going to be negative 125. 6 cubed, I'm actually not sure. No, let's actually do it. 6 times 6 is 36. So what is 36 times 6? 6 times 6 is actually 36. 3 times 6 is 18 plus 3, that's 21. So we have 216, and here we're going to have negative 216. Now 7 cubed, I know 7 squared is 49. So if I say 49 times 7, 7 times 9 is 63. 4 times 7 is 28 plus 6, that's 34. So now we have 343, and here negative 343. All right. And you can go on and do up until 15. All right. Yeah. So let's go on to the next, which is cube root. Just like a square root, the cube root is the inverse operation of a cube. So if we have cube root of 8, that is just going to be 2. A cube root of 64, that's going to be 4. If you have a negative cube root of negative 64, that's going to be negative 4. But let's just check, okay? Because these negatives, sometimes you just need to be sure about them. So if you have negative 64, no, cubed root, I did a square root. You can't have a square root of a negative number. So shift and that, let's put a 3. And here let's put a negative 64. And you see that is negative 4. Okay, so cubed roots you can have negative. But the square roots, I didn't say this previously, you cannot have negative square root of 144. That number doesn't exist. Okay, you're going to get a math you're going to get a math error if you try to do that. Okay, so that's just an imaginary number. So in your calculators, it will probably say math error. Go ahead and give it a try. But for cubed roots, you can definitely have a negative. All right, with that being said, what is the cube root of 343? That's going to be 7. And this side is going to be negative 7. Cube root of 216, that will be 6. And here we're going to have negative 6. Cube root of 125 is 5. And then we're going to have negative 5. Cube root of 64, that's 4. Here we're going to have negative 4. Cube root of 27 is 3. The cube root of negative 27 is negative 3. Cube root of 8 is 2. Negative cube root of 8, that's 8. That's negative 2. Cubed root of 1 is 1. and the cubed root of negative 1 is negative 1. And the cubed root of 0, that's just 0. All right, so that marks it off then. We're done with squares, we're done with cubes. And you're not limited to that. You can also have like 2 to the power 4, or the 4th root of 2, okay? Or the 5th root of the 6th root, anything. It really, with exponents, you're not limited. But the numbers get either really very big when you square or cube or quadruple or quintuple, and they get really small when you root them. All right, and that's it for now.